ask you, the Chief C.J. Davis, in my interview with her, she said that all the officers being black, it takes race off the table. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think race is still on the table. When a culture of policing historically has treated those from different groups differently, even when the individuals are from that same group, that culture can still exist. And we have to zero in on it, being honest about it, and making sure that we properly train police for the realities of the cities that they are policing in.
That's spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. Turning what happened in Memphis into white supremacy. The great Royce White is here, former NBA player, but he's got a greater claim to fame right now and in the future. He ran against Ilhan Omar for Congress, but he's an amazing writer. You can check him out on his Substack, roycewhite.substack.com. Royce, how are you, brother?
I'm good, brother. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm grateful you're here. Let's start there. Let's start with Tyree. What do you make of the fact that it was 5 black police officers and has Tyree's mom and all the rest are so distraught that it was other black people who did this to Tyree? What do you think of that?
Well, and I said this in my Substack, my latest Substack piece. You know, the takeaway for me is that increasingly this has nothing to do with race. And when we talk about the police as an institution, or we talk about the government, our government, and what we see the impulse of our government lean towards, which is authoritarianism, increasingly, tyranny, increasingly, surveillance, and so on and so forth. It really doesn't matter what the race of these cops were or the race of this individual. To me, I see a group of people who have been commissioned by the state to exercise their authority in a way that is unjust and unlawful, and it's really un-American.
I know you talked on your Substack a lot about cultural Marxism.
Yes.
And where we are right now as a nation. And this special is about identity politics. So let's put those two together. Yeah. First, let's define cultural Marxism. We need to be very aware of what it is and where it is around us. But then how does identity politics used to continue this march through the institutions?
Well, and this is the real scam that the Democrat establishment is running in this whole Tyre Nichols situation. They're taking the situation that you see with your eyes and they're spinning it with a narrative that's very, very politically motivated. And at bottom, this whole cultural Marxist agenda is very clear to me. Cultural Marxism is an economic and political ideology that presents itself as this sort of remedy to the unequal distribution of natural resources and labor. And that's only half the story with Marxism. In the beginning, Marxism was explicitly secular or anti-God. And actually what they mean to do is reduce the entire human existence down to price. And Tyre Nichols has a price, black women have a price, the LGBTQ has a price, the white patriarchy has a price. Everything is price related. And so right now what they're trying to do is negotiate the price of this Tyre Nichols tragedy. And they're willing to do it at his expense, the expense of his memory or anything that he had done in his lifetime that was good and tied up in this race baiting conversation.
What do you mean by price? I want to understand this framework because I'm tracking, but what do you mean by price?
Well, I mean, cultural Marxism or Marxism as a political philosophy is a radical materialist philosophy. It makes the claim that everything in society is about price, is about the price of the cost of living, the distribution of labor, the distribution of power within the labor market. And that's the claim that Karl Marx used to sell to people who were dispossessed. But ultimately he was wise and he was very manipulative in that his real aim was to delegitimize God. And when you say everything has a price, you by default delegitimize God. And that is exactly what the Democrat establishment plans to do. And they use black people to do it ad nauseum, whether it be Tyre Nichols, George Floyd, or anybody else.
Well, I really want to get this price because I want to use this. And I'm almost there. So it has a price. Everything has a price. Everyone, I guess a price for what? So you say like LGBTQ, like that is a price. A price for what? Well, who's paying it and what's it get?
Well, no, the price is a number of different economic considerations. The money you're able to make, the wealth distribution is another trope that you often hear come from the radical left. equality in the workplace between men and women. And there's a reason why the black feminist is the greatest ally of cultural Marxism. Because if you can use the black woman in the black community, but in the wide spectrum of American culture to delegitimize the value of men's work, now you can delegitimize men as a whole. And then you can actually hijack the reproductive system, the human reproductive system, and you now own the sexual marketplace, which is why this black politician here, this black man, knows that he has to peddle this race narrative, this cultural Marxist narrative, not only for his own political gain or professional gain, but also his sexual pursuits. And in that way, it is a very manipulative and pernicious ideology.
Let's go back to the removal of God, because I think that's the most important factor here entirely. It has to be. And if you read the Old Testament in particular, it's all throughout it. I'm reading through Deuteronomy now, and it's all remember what happened, remember me, do these things, don't forget. One of my favorite things is the Jews during Passover, they don't talk about how they were slaves in Egypt. They say we were slaves in Egypt. So there's like a direct connection of God and his promises and all the rest. And we have thrown all of that away. Can you speak to that?
Well, as a Christian man, it is my belief, my wholehearted belief, that this entire political agenda from top to bottom is very anti-God, and I see it this way, and you can tell me if you disagree. There are 4 heresies of the West, 4 heresies of Western culture going all the way back to the scientific method. The 4 are the scientific method, democracy, computer technology, and now we see the 4th will end up being artificial intelligence. And all four of them try to promote themselves as a remedy for the gap between man and God, and that man can.
What were they? Run through them again. What was the first 2 in particular?
The first was the scientific method. The scientific method, and then you had democracy. Right, democracy. I'll break them each down individually. Scientific method says, look, there's a gap between our knowledge and the intelligent design, the Almighty. There's a gap in between our human knowledge and that knowledge, that supreme knowledge. We can fill it with mathematics and science. Okay, and if we get there, then we won't need God. Right, we can solve this equation on our own. Then it was democracy. They said, hey, we can't get this equation down. There's something here that is above us. There's something divine in here that we can't quite calculate. So now if we create a wide mass consensus amongst the people, or even a representative consensus, now we can make everything right and we don't need God. And then it was, well, we can't get the equation right. We can't come to a consensus that's reasonable. Now we want to let computers do the job. Now we want to use computers to increase the bandwidth so that we don't need God. And finally, last but not least, humans will never get this right altogether. We're imperfect. We should hate ourselves. We are the problem with the world, and we'll let the AI, technology, and robots do the job for us. It's very satanic. It's very satanic in its impulse. And when you see across time, a wide enough body of time, if you go back to Descartes, I think, therefore I am, all the way to now where we're going to let ChatGPT tell us that this Tyree Nichols incident is white supremacy. It is very, very satanic in its impulse, and it's meant to make people not believe in God.
You're so right, because you're not thinking anymore. We don't have to. The AI will do it. Therefore, you aren't. Wow. Okay. Last question. 60 seconds. Identity politics. What's the problem with it? Where does it lead us?
Well, it leads us into chaos. I mean, identity politics is a scam from the word go. And really, identity politics in its modern form is just meant to delegitimize the nation state, which is then meant to usher in and justify a global governance where your identity will then be used again. We see that with the social credit score. So your identity may not be race at that point. It'll probably be some amalgamation of other woke thoughts or philosophies.
Yes, different intersectionalities. As opposed to what? What should your identity? What's Royce White's identity?
Well, my identity is I'm a Christian, number one, but also I'm a man and I'm an American man. And I believe that the borders are important and that the nation state is important. And we have many things we need to do in this nation to work on this nation. But the nation is important, especially in the face of the globalist impulse that we're looking at.
and I've always had. Royce White, check him out on Substack and on Twitter and everywhere else, of course. Royce, wonderful to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Godspeed, brother.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. This was an amazing special we did about identity politics and inspired by Black History Month. We talked about how we should really be teaching our history, and we touched on so many eternal themes, so many biblical themes, because we're all wrong, right? There's definitely problems in this country, but we're searching for the answers in all the wrong places when it's all in the Bible. And that's what our podcast is about. It's called Politics by Faith, where we take the story of the day that's causing anxiety, like race in America and Tyree Nichols in Memphis and all this stuff that's just causing anxiety and tension and division. And we talk about it from a historical and a biblical perspective and make the anxiety go away. So if you like that last clip, you'll love the podcast. It's anywhere you listen to a podcast called Politics by Faith.